The road stretched out like a scar through the Kansas plains, a narrow dirt path that seemed to go on forever, splitting the endless sea of wheat and dead soil. The sun was sinking low, staining the horizon with orange and red when Ethan Cole finally saw the farmhouse. From a distance, it looked like a memory, one that didn't want to be remembered. It rose out of the earth crooked and grey, its roof caved slightly in the middle, its windows hollow and black like missing eyes. The wind pushed through the tall grass, carrying with it the dry whisper of something ancient. Ethan slowed his truck and killed the engine. The silence that followed was almost physical. He stepped out, boots crunching against the brittle dirt. The air smelled faintly of iron and mold. This was supposed to be the start of something new, his next renovation project. 240 acres of land for next to nothing. It was old farmland, left to rot since before the Depression, and he planned to flip it into a hunting lodge, or maybe a rental cabin. A deal too good to pass up, but standing there, he couldn't shake the feeling that the land didn't want to be touched. The house loomed over him as he approached, the boards groaning quietly in the wind. He paused at the front steps, staring at the porch where weeds had grown through the gaps. He glanced toward the barn. Its doors hung unevenly, one half off the hinge, the structure leaning east like it was trying to escape something. Ethan ran a hand through his hair and muttered, "Needs a little love, that's all." The words didn't sound convincing, even to him. He squatted near the edge of the field and picked up a piece of wheat. It was grey, not gold. Dry, hollow, but when he rubbed it between his fingers, it didn't crumble like dead plant matter should. It disintegrated into something like ash. He frowned. "That's weird," he said quietly. "Needs replanting. Easy fix." A voice came from behind him, low and soft. "Nothing grows here anymore." Ethan jerked upright. An old man stood about 20 feet away at the fence line. He hadn't made a sound walking up. The man's clothes were the kind that belonged to another era. Overalls, a faded plaid shirt, a wide-brimmed hat shadowing most of his face. His skin looked thin, almost translucent, and his eyes were pale grey, like storm clouds before lightning. Ethan forced a polite smile. "I didn't see you there." The man tilted his head. "Ain't many do. You live nearby?" Ethan asked. The old man didn't answer right away. He just stared across the field. "You're buying this place, ain't you?" Ethan nodded cautiously. "That's the plan." The man's eyes narrowed, his lips pulling tight. "Then you best be careful where you sow. This land remembers." The words hung in the air like frost. Ethan blinked, confused. What's that supposed to mean? But the man was already walking away, his steps slow and uneven, disappearing into the sea of wheat. Ethan turned his head for just a second, and when he looked back, the old man was gone. The quiet pressed in again. Inside, the farmhouse smelled of rot and dust. The floors creaked beneath his boots as he walked through the hall. Everything looked frozen in time. Old wallpaper peeled down in long strips. A dining table still set with cracked dishes, and faded photographs hanging crooked on the walls. He stopped at one of them, a family portrait, 5 people, 2 parents and 3 children, all standing stiffly in front of a wheat field. The father held a sickle, pride in his posture, while the mother's eyes seemed distant, almost hollow. The name carved below the frame read Jacob Sower, 1891. Ethan whispered, "The Sower's farm." The name matched the one from the real estate listing. He let out a short laugh. "Of course." He explored deeper into the house, flashlight beam cutting through the dim. The wallpaper gave way to exposed wood, and the air felt colder. In the kitchen, something caught his attention. A small circle of dried wheat laid carefully on the floor, each stalk bound together with red twine, forming a shape that looked deliberate. Ritualistic. He crouched to examine it, but didn't touch. What the hell? The room seemed to hum faintly, as if the walls were breathing. He stepped back, uneasy, and left the circle undisturbed. By the time he reached his truck, dusk had turned to full night. Crickets had stopped chirping. The wind had died. It was the kind of silence that made his skin crawl. He told himself he was just tired and drove off toward the nearest motel. Sleep didn't come easily. He lay in the cheap bed, staring at the ceiling, the sound of the wind outside slipping through the cracks of the window. At first, it was just the ordinary moan of the plains. But then, buried in that wind, came something else. A voice. Ethan. He sat up straight, heart pounding. The room was still. Only the clock ticked. He exhaled slowly and sank back down. Minutes passed. His eyelids grew heavy again, until the whisper returned, faint and close to his ear. "Leave it be!" He shot up, flipping the lamp on. The room was empty. Nothing moved, except the curtain, fluttering softly though the window was shut. His hands were shaking when he turned the light off again. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. At dawn, he was back at the farmhouse. The sun barely cut through the fog that rolled across the fields. He headed straight for the barn, trying to focus on his work. When he pulled the doors open, a wave of rot and mildew hit him so hard he gagged. The air inside was colder than outside, unnaturally so. His flashlight flicked across the space, wooden beams, broken tools. Haylong turned to dust, but on the ground, deep lines were carved into the dirt, as if something heavy had been dragged back and forth over the years. At the far end, something metallic glimmered in the light. He approached and found an old plow, massive, rusted, but still sharp at the edges. It was caked in mud that had darkened over time, almost black. He reached out, brushing his fingers over the metal. A whisper tore through his head, so sudden and sharp, it made him stagger. "You dig, you feed." Ethan dropped the plow, stumbling back. His heart slammed against his ribs. He spun toward the doorway, and for a split second, he saw someone standing just beyond the threshold. A tall figure in a wide-brimmed hat, watching. Then lightning flashed outside, and the figure was gone. He stood frozen for a long time, breath ragged, listening. Nothing, just the distant moan of the wind again. He shook his head, muttering, "It's in your head. You're overtired." That's all. When he finally drove home that evening, the sky was dark and heavy with clouds. He turned on the wipers as the first drops fell, focusing on the road. But when he checked the rearview mirror, his stomach dropped. There, in the bed of his truck, sat a man, still, silent, hat pulled low, a rusted sickle resting across his knees. Ethan's eyes went wide. He turned instantly, but the truck bed was empty. Rain hit the windshield in bursts, like fingers tapping. He didn't look back again. Over the next few days, things began to unravel. Tools vanished from where he'd left them. Birds stopped landing anywhere near the farmhouse. Each morning, his truck battery was dead, even when he disconnected it the night before. The whispers came back too, stronger this time, threading through the wind like prayers. He tried recording them. On playback, the noise wasn't the wind at all. It was chanting, ancient words, rhythmic, deliberate, like a preacher reciting a harvest hymn. He couldn't ignore it anymore. He needed answers. In town, he found an archivist named Linda May, who managed the county's old records. She listened to his questions with quiet concern. "You said the Sower property?" she asked. "You're not from around here, are you?" Ethan shook his head. "Just bought it." Linda's expression tightened. Jacob Sower was a preacher before he was a farmer. Moved here in 1887. Folks said he started mixing his sermons with pagan harvest rituals, blood offerings, sacrifices. He believed the land demanded life to stay fertile. Ethan swallowed. Human sacrifices. Her eyes dropped to the table. His wife and children disappeared one winter. Whole town searched. All they found were the wheat circles and bones in the soil. The sheriff said Jacob hanged himself in the barn, but she hesitated, lowering her voice. His body vanished before sunrise. Ethan stared at her, heart thudding in his chest. And the land? Linda looked up, her face pale. Nothing's grown there since. The clock ticked softly in the background. Outside, the wind began to howl, and deep inside Ethan, something whispered again, soft, steady, and hungry. You dig, you feed. The night settled over the Kansas plains like a dark ocean, swallowing what was left of the light. By the time Daniel reached the porch of the farmhouse, the world behind him had vanished into black. Only the flickering bulb above the front door remained, buzzing faintly as if protesting its own survival. He hesitated before stepping inside, glancing once toward the wheat fields, where the wind moved in long, slow waves. It almost looked like the land was breathing. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and the faint scent of rot. His boots creaked against the warped floorboards as he entered. The living room was a collage of time gone wrong. Furniture draped in white sheets, walls faded into ghostly hues, and photographs on the mantel that showed people with eyes blurred by age. He shone his flashlight toward them. A family, husband, wife, 2 children, stood in front of the same porch where he now stood. The man's expression was stern, his hand resting on a sickle. Etched beneath the photo in fading ink were 3 words, "The harvest begins." A sound came from deeper inside the house. Not the wind this time, a slow dragging, like a boot scuffing against the floor. Daniel froze, then it stopped. "Hello." His voice felt foreign in the emptiness. "Anyone here?" Nothing. He moved toward the sound anyway. Every step deepened the silence. When he reached the kitchen, the door to the cellar was open just a crack. He crouched down and saw footprints, fresh, dusty ones, leading down into the dark. He hesitated, tightening his grip on the flashlight. Maybe squatters, or an animal. But deep inside, something whispered, "Go back." He ignored it. The cellar steps groaned under his weight. The air grew colder, the smell stronger. Earth and something sweet, like decayed fruit. He reached the bottom and swept the flashlight across the room. Wooden shelves lined the walls, filled with old canning jars, most of them shattered. The floor was layered in dry husks, corn, wheat, and seeds that had turned black. And then he saw it. In the far corner, a patch of earth pulsed faintly, as if it were breathing. The soil shifted, and for a moment, he thought something was trying to emerge. Daniel stepped closer, mesmerized. The flashlight flickered. Suddenly, the ground split open with a brittle crack. Something pale pushed through the soil, a skeletal hand, clutching what looked like dried roots. Daniel stumbled backward, hitting the wall. The hand flexed, dragging itself upward, revealing an arm wrapped in shriveled vines. The air turned thick, alive with a whispering sound that filled his skull. The sower, the voices breathed, overlapping in 100 tones. "He feeds us still." Daniel bolted up the stairs. The cellar door slammed behind him with a sound that shook the entire house. He ran toward the front door, but it wouldn't budge. He pulled at the handle again and again, the wood refusing to give. When he looked through the window, his stomach turned cold, because outside, the wheat fields were no longer still. Shapes moved between the stalks, dozens of them, figures with faces hidden beneath burlap sacks, their bodies thin and crooked. They swayed in rhythm with the wind, holding farming tools glinting in the moonlight. He backed away slowly, heart hammering. His flashlight caught a reflection on the wall, a framed parchment, its glass cracked. He moved closer, reading the faded words. "To those who take without giving, may the field take you in return. The Sower'S Curse binds all who steal from this land." Daniel whispered to himself, "What the hell is this?" The lights flickered violently, then burst, plunging the room into darkness. He stumbled toward his bag on the floor, fumbling for his phone. When the screen lit up, it showed one new photo, something that hadn't been there before. His heart stopped. It was him, standing at the edge of the wheat field. Behind him, a shadowed figure loomed, its face obscured. The phone slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. A voice echoed softly from the doorway behind him. "You shouldn't have come back, Daniel." He turned slowly. A man stood there, tall and wiry, dressed in overalls blackened by dirt. His eyes gleamed with a dim, unnatural light. In one hand, he held a rusted sickle. Daniel's breath caught. The man's skin looked wrong, like it was made of dry clay, cracking with each movement. "Who are you?" Daniel managed to say. The man tilted his head. "The one who sowed what you've forgotten." He stepped closer, dragging the sickle across the floor. "You left this land. You let it starve. And now it takes what it's owed." Daniel backed toward the window. "This isn't real. You're dead." The man smiled faintly. "The field remembers what you forget. Blood, sweat, betrayal. It keeps growing, boy." The walls began to pulse, the wallpaper rippling like flesh. Outside, the figures in the field started moving toward the house, their whispers merging into one long, low hum. The wind howled through the cracks, carrying with it the scent of decay and wet soil. Daniel smashed the window with a chair and climbed through, cutting his arm on the glass. He ran through the yard, the wheat brushing his sides like cold hands. Behind him, he could hear the creak of footsteps, dozens of them. He ran toward his truck parked near the road. The keys trembled in his bloody hand as he jammed them into the ignition. The engine coughed, sputtered, then came to life. He floored the gas. The headlights illuminated the dirt road ahead, then caught something standing in the middle of it. It was the scarecrow, but it wasn't hanging anymore. It stood upright, head tilted, its stitched mouth slightly open. In its chest cavity, something glowed faintly, pale, like embers. Daniel swerved, slamming the truck into the ditch. The impact threw him sideways. The engine died. Silence pressed down again, heavier than before. He blinked through the pane, fumbling for the door handle. When he looked back toward the road, the scarecrow was gone. Then he heard breathing. Inside the cab, a hand, rough and soil-covered, reached from the passenger seat and grabbed his shoulder. A whisper crawled into his ear. "The Sower never rests." The world went black. By morning, the truck was still there, half buried in dust. The driver's door hung open, swinging gently in the breeze. No sign of Daniel, just a trail of footsteps leading into the fields. A week later, the locals said they saw someone new out there, a man in overalls, tending to the crops just before sunrise. He didn't speak. He didn't wave. He just walked the rows with a sickle in hand, humming to himself as the wheat swayed around him. And when the wind passed through those golden stalks, it carried with it the faintest whisper, like voices buried deep in the soil, murmuring to anyone who dared to listen. The field takes what it's owed.
Please like and subscribe channel Fear Frequency for more horror stories. Thank you.